be self-lofted into the stratosphere and spread globally within weeks. That's for only Pakistan and India being involved. And here's another person, totally different background, Billy Graham, the evangelist. So when the movie The Day After came out, Billy Graham put it in his book. So he, at that time, recognized the harshness of nuclear winter.
What is The Day After?
Day After was a famous movie talking about the day after nuclear war.
It came out
Roughly in the mid-'80s.
80s.
A year or two after Sagan's talk. So this was so popularized in the 1980s, and since then there's almost been a media self-censorship and no discussion of it. Has anybody in this room seen a 30-minute episode on any TV channel about nuclear winter?
No.
Nobody says yes. And I would probably have known about, but of course I don't watch all TV channels either. But on Billy Graham's, you can see his book here is called Peace with God, and he's trying to reconcile nuclear weapons with God, which is what a lot of other churches do, and it doesn't make sense. His final chapter he titles The Day After. And I'm going to pass around a page from that book, not the whole book, but you can see that.
So it's basically the fallout from any nuclear exchange would go up to the atmosphere, block out the rays of the sun? Is that what
Block out the sunlight.
And
there's so much evidence to that effect. And this is my famous prop. Nate's already seen it. So this represents the Earth. And on one side you have the U.S. and you have the Russia on the other side. Well, this little object called the Earth is moving constantly. The rotation speed of the Earth is 1,000 miles per hour. Nobody disputes that. So the rotation speed drives wind and water circulation. So all this nuclear radiation gets into the atmosphere and it spreads. It inevitably spreads around the globe. There's really no counter logic. The only way to refute this is to say the planet doesn't rotate. The fact that the planet rotates has been known for 500 years. And I have and Copernicus, I have his famous book here, the Table of Contents. He has one subpart to his book 1 titled A Demonstration of the Threefold Movement of the Earth. This is in over here, a little bit of biography, dies in 1543. And it's called about the revolution of the Earth. We now know that the revolution of the Earth is, and hardly anybody knows this, is 67,000 miles per hour. So Copernicus knew this 500 years ago. But the nuclear winter implications are virtually unknown. And I don't think there's a dispute about it, but I'll pass around this page if you're curious, just to verify that. I got some notes shorter than Nate's maybe. I forgot the Sagan's famous article. So this is
Parade magazine, yeah.
I'll take that.
You've seen this before?
I haven't seen this before. I've seen
Okay,
Parade
maybe
magazine.
a few people haven't. This is in, I think it was
1983, October 30th, 1983.
Yeah,
Look
it
at
says the
that.
Las Vegas Sun, and this is what led to the movie The Day After. And so much, and then this led to Billy Graham thinking about it. So this was a popular concept in the 83. It has almost again
I was a
been this.
freshman in college then.
What?
But she was a freshman in college.
Sorry.
She was a freshman in college.
Oh, okay. I wish I was then. Too.
But you know, this is like that's kind of the catalytic moments were coming together here for the movement in the 80s. This
Yeah.
groundswell of anti-nuclear movements based on this kind of stuff going on.
Right.
And particularly since he came to Las Vegas to talk about this.
Yeah.
The reason Copernicus knew of the three movements of the Earth at the same time, and the other one is I already mentioned two of them, and the one I haven't mentioned is the 23-degree tilt. But so if you're in an airplane traveling at 600 miles an hour, and you're moving in the airplane, you're actually moving 5 ways simultaneously, because you have the 23-degree tilt. The Earth is doing all this total movement, which people don't get the implications of it, which just totally astounds me. By the way, Einstein knew of the concept nuclear winter in 1955. He and Bertrand Russell, who was a famous mathematician and philosopher, wrote something called the Russell-Einstein Manifesto. And there's a couple paragraphs in there that allude to nuclear winter. The concept wasn't known there, but of course Einstein knew about it because he had the E versus mc² equation, and that was in 1905. And if you know that equation, it implies there would be a massive amount of radioactivity fostered. In fact, if you explode a nuclear weapon over a city, even a large one, small one, whatever, or particularly say a large one, the city does not totally disappear. Where does the city go?
The blast radius, and then there's
Into the
shrapnel and
atmosphere?
debris and stuff that would go into
I
the air
can't
as
hear.
well. There would be a blast radius where there's a vicinity where they just get eviscerated, and then there would be outside the blast radius they would become particles and shrapnel and dust that would spread
Oh
out.
yeah, but that's true. But there's another place the city goes,
In the atmosphere.
in the atmosphere.
Wow.
Some of it goes in the atmosphere. Well, it'll be different levels depending on the weight of stuff. But so some stuff would be in the air for 2 hours, other stuff for 2 days, some 2 months, maybe some 2 years. And particularly the stuff you can't see goes above the atmosphere into one of the top layers of the atmosphere, in which it slowly percolates down and contaminates everything. So the radiation would just circle all over. Sagan knew about the consequences of nuclear winter in terms of the massive health effects. The World Health System was totally collapsed. The World Trade System totally collapses. Agriculture totally collapses. There's photosynthesis disappears largely, so you don't have food. Without food, humans die. But there's even something worse than mass global famine, which people also aren't so aware of. What's worse than global famine?
Without light, the plants die, which means oxygen dies.
I have trouble because I can't lip read you.
Oh, sorry.
Well, the plants dying, that would just be part of global famine.
But the plants do more than feed us. They provide
the
oxygen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and big animals are all going to die. No cows for milk, etc. I forgot my train of thought.
But what's worse than global famine? Is
Oh
it
yeah, of
disease?
course. How did I forget that? So, what's worse is, and I think there's dispute among this in terms of the experts that. Okay, back to your flying in an airplane at 600 miles an hour. What happens if there's a minor hole in the top of your airplane?
Depressurization.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And big problems, and if the hole's big enough, the airplane crashes.
Blows up.
Well, the airplane ceiling equivalent is the atmosphere. So at a certain level, nuclear bombs are going to rupture the ozone layer and rupture the ceiling of the planet Earth. and that means that's worse than mass famine, because in mass famine, even a few million people might survive in the Amazon, whatever. But if you totally destroy the ozone shield, everything's gone, and it opens up the prospect of solar winds coming into the Earth. So the Earth, that's another way the atmosphere protects the Earth. But if you wreck the atmosphere, you have solar winds coming in, and hardly anybody knows this. And I only learned about it not too many years ago. Solar winds move at, and this is not an exaggeration, 1,000,000 miles an hour. So is anybody going to survive a hurricane at 1,000,000 miles an hour? So that's worse than the famine that would even come about at a low-level nuclear exchange. Again, this is the parallels between this. You have the 1930 Oklahoma dust storm, Dust Bowl. What if every speck of that dust bowl was irradiated or has radioactivity in it? Real bad news. Almost every year there is dust that flows from the Sahara that hits the southeastern states. In recent years, we've had these massive fires, including one in Australia, where some of the smoke circulates the globe. I'd like to see a map of the smoke from the LA fires. How many states got some smoke from the LA fires? That's something you folks could pursue. We know from the Trinity test, the radiation from that went to most states in the U.S.
Well, the LA fires right now are they're dealing with the same thing that you were talking about earlier with what happens to a city. The particles and the pollutants and the poisons from the destruction of those buildings have gone up into the atmosphere, but the wind conditions have blown them out to sea, but they are still reaching the other islands in the Pacific.
We know that from those Pacific bomb tests. But the best example, parallel in terms of damage, I think, is from the volcanoes. We know certain volcanoes have induced climatic change. And there's a famous example of the summer of the year with no summer. Well, what if you have a nuclear war situation and you have a decade of no summer and no spring? Well, you have bad news for everybody. But that's probably not bad news. I have some, again, good implications of all this, as impossible as this sounds. One is nuclear winter implies there should be a massive reduction in DoD spending. I'm talking about 50% or larger. It's a total waste. The Earth is going to retaliate. He mentioned the triad. You have another whole retaliatory system for the U.S., and it's called the Earth. If anybody threatens or bombs the Earth is going to respond and hit them. In fact, it may hit them and be more harmful because they're going to have a slow, torturous, agonizing death knowing what happened. The people who get bombed initially are not going to know about it, and so in a way they have a more peaceful death. As bizarre as that says, understands, but you can relate to it. Okay, that's the one good news. Nate also mentioned the land-based missiles. They're the most vulnerable part of the triad. You can eliminate all them. You don't need them to retaliate because you have the submarines and you have bombers and you have the Earth, which is your ally. The Earth is the ally of Russia. The Earth is the ally of China and the U.S. at the same time. So, in a sense, we live in a planetary system devised by God, nature, or whatever, and those are the only alternatives, where the Earth potentially is our biggest friend and ally, and is such that it can change conditions to totally reorganize life on the planet Earth if people come to realize, to the realization of nuclear winter. And also, nuclear winter also means there is no such thing as a winnable nuclear war. The Pentagon planners have been espousing for periodically for decades. It means there's no need for quick retaliation because the Earth's going to retaliate for you anyway. I already alluded to that. Another part of the good news, which I'll call the good news, and it relates to young people in the United States. So, in recent years, young people, I'm talking about people in their 30s, 20s, teens, they've heard these threats from Putin. They've heard of the Kim Trump nuclear confrontation that lasted for over a year, mutual insults between them. So nuclear stuff is on their mind whether or not they realize it, and I'm convinced that these people are going to be by far the most intense anti-nuclear people ever. And so imagine that you have Greta and what she did as a teenager, where there's going to be in the U.S. a million, I'd say 1 million plus young people, Karens and Nates and even younger people who are aware of this, and they're going to be springing up all over the country. And they're going to be so intense. Particularly females are going to get this because females naturally know about children 9 months in advance and have a little better understanding of that. So they're going to be concerned about their children and grandchildren. I have a new perspective of children because I had a sibling 10 years younger and I helped raise him. But the equation of children and nuclear weapons totally doesn't make sense. People are going to come to that realization and come through sort of a inevitable logic process that relates to this. Well, I guess that's about my 10 minutes. I'd be glad to talk to any of you later.
I think she got questions.
Okay.
I was just mentioning about the Krakatoa eruption in 536. That was very destructive
Yeah.
for you had famine, you had plague, and it extended all the way to the Mediterranean from Indonesia and all over Europe. And I think it was even mentioned there is even found archaeological evidence of it in Iceland as well. Spread all the way. So.
What was that event?
Oh, the Krakatoa eruption in 536 AD.
Okay.
No,
That's a
Krakatoa was
volcano.
in the 1800s.